In the cold dark of space, a silent signal raced through subspace channels, faster than light, reaching every corner of the Galactic Alliance in seconds. On thousands of alien ships and planetary stations, leaders received the same terrifying message. The signal came directly from the Galactic High Command, and its contents shook civilizations to their core. The message was short, urgent, and delivered in a voice no one dared to question. This is a Level 0 emergency directive. Effective. Immediately, all outer colonies are to be abandoned. Priority evacuation is restricted to military assets, officials, and scientific elites. Civilian rescue is canceled. Repeat, civilians are to be left behind. Do not engage the incoming threat. Retreat to safe systems. This order is final. Across the stars, entire governments followed the order without argument. Ships filled with generals, politicians, and scientists fled the outer colonies in massive waves. Spaceports overflowed with escape shuttles. High-ranking officials pushed aside civilians to secure their own seats. Parents begged for their children's lives, but there were no exceptions. The military had already locked the escape plans. Billions of ordinary beings were left behind, stranded in cities that would soon face something worse than war. Rumors spread fast. The devourer swarms were coming, strange, living clouds of energy and destruction that no one truly understood. Some said they were a cosmic force of nature. Others whispered they were an ancient weapon gone wrong. Whatever they were, one thing was clear. When the swarms arrived, entire planets vanished. First, the atmosphere would go black. Then matter itself, buildings, people, even oceans would dissolve into fine dust, leaving behind empty, dead worlds. No army had ever stopped them. That's why the Galactic Alliance had made the decision: run and leave the weak to die. But not everyone obeyed the order. On Colony K-47, a human outpost in the far reaches of Alliance space, the evacuation sirens wailed just like everywhere else. But instead of fleeing, the Human Emergency Response Corps held their ground. Elias Grant, a scarred veteran with silver hair and tired eyes, gathered his team in the main command tent, staring at the evacuation message with cold fury. Around him, human medics, engineers, and soldiers waited for his decision. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of every choice they had ever made. "They're ordering us to leave the civilians," he said, his hands clenched into fists. "Not just humans, all civilians. Alien refugees, families, workers, billions of lives. They're leaving them to die." Dr. Lena Ortiz, the lead medical officer, stepped forward. Her eyes were sharp, her voice calm. "Captain, if we stay, we'll be caught in the swarms. We might not survive." Grant looked at her, his jaw set. "We've trained for impossible missions before. We've fought when others ran. We're not running now." He activated the colony's emergency broadcast system and sent a signal across all frequencies. His message echoed through space, heard by every ship, every station, and every alien species still listening. His voice was strong, defiant, and clear. "This is Captain Elias Grant of the Human Emergency Response Corps. To all civilians, we are not evacuating. We will hold this colony. We will protect every life we can. We do not leave people behind, not on our watch." The message stunned the galaxy. News channels across multiple species replayed his words. Some called it heroic. Others called it suicidal. But on Colony K-47, something incredible began to happen. Refugees from nearby colonies flooded toward the human camps. Starships packed with alien families, sick children, injured workers, and desperate civilians landed at human coordinates, begging for shelter. The humans welcomed them all, setting up medical tents, food centers, and protective shields. The small human outpost became the last safe zone for thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions of beings who had nowhere else to go. As the days passed, tension grew. From orbit, human satellites showed dark clouds approaching from deep space. The devourer swarms were coming. The black waves of energy flickered at the edges of the system, their tendrils already reaching out toward the planet's atmosphere. Captain Grant held emergency meetings with his team, preparing for the worst. "We can't stop the swarm with standard weapons," he told them, "but we can slow them down. We have to protect the civilians long enough to finish building the energy redirection grid." His team worked day and night, installing graviton warheads and polarity shields, experimental tech that most of the galaxy refused to use because it was too dangerous. The humans didn't care about the risks. They cared about saving lives. Dr. Ortiz led the medical teams, treating alien refugees from dozens of species. Many had injuries from chaotic evacuations. Others were sick from starvation. No one was turned away. Every medic, nurse, and volunteer worked without sleep, stitching wounds, delivering babies, and sharing food. The human camp became a symbol of hope in a galaxy that had chosen fear. Meanwhile, the Galactic Alliance watched from a safe distance, sending no help. Secret meetings were held in hidden war rooms. Alliance leaders debated what to do about humanity's refusal to follow orders. Some suggested cutting off supplies to the human outpost. Others wanted to send in military ships to force a retreat. But they all knew the truth. If the humans succeeded, the Alliance's shame would be exposed. Billions would realize the Alliance had abandoned them, while humanity stood firm. And if the humans failed, the galaxy would simply watch them die. Either way, the Alliance planned to let the situation play out without interference. Back on Colony, K-47, the sky grew darker. Sensors detected the swarm's main body entering the system. Black clouds stretched across space like living shadows, absorbing light, bending gravity. Captain Grant stood at the edge of the defense zone, looking up. At the sky, his heart pounded, but he showed no fear. Around him, human soldiers prepared the defense grid. Engineers double-checked shield generators. Medics stood ready to treat the wounded. Refugee families huddled together in shelters, whispering prayers in 100 different alien languages. The humans kept their promise. They stayed as the first. Swarm tendrils touched the planet's upper atmosphere. Strange signals began to interfere with communication systems. Whispers in unknown languages filled the airwaves and shaped codes, fragments of data no one had ever heard before. The swarms weren't just consuming matter, they were sending messages. Dr. Ortiz scanned the signals and froze. Her eyes went wide. "Captain, there's something inside the swarm. This isn't just destruction. There's information buried." In the energy waves, Grant narrowed his eyes. "What kind of information?" Ortiz's hands trembled as she decoded the first fragments. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, the Alliance knew about this. They knew all along." The black clouds continued to spread, covering the sky like a living storm. The first phase of the stand had begun. Humanity had chosen to defy the galaxy's most powerful leaders, not just to save lives, but to uncover a truth no one wanted to face. And now, as the swarm reached for the planet below, the humans braced for the battle of their lives. The black clouds in the sky thickened, swallowing sunlight, casting Colony K-47 into an unnatural twilight. The devourer swarm was arriving, and everyone knew the worst was yet to come. Refugees huddled together inside human shelters, staring at the sky with wide, terrified eyes. Alien families clutched their children. Wounded civilians lay in medical tents while human doctors worked tirelessly, ignoring exhaustion. Captain Elias Grant stood at the edge of the defense perimeter, staring into the swirling darkness overhead. His face was hard, but his mind raced. They had made a decision no other species dared to make. They had chosen to stay, to protect. Those abandoned by the Galactic Alliance? Now, that decision was about to be tested. Human engineers finished calibrating the graviton warheads, dangerous weapons built to interfere with gravitational fields. They could redirect the swarms, energy tendrils away from key locations, but if anything went wrong, the entire colony could collapse into a singularity. No one else in the galaxy would even consider using such tech, but the humans had no choice. They were all that stood between the refugees and total annihilation. Dr. Lena Ortiz worked beside her medical team, hands stained with alien blood, patching up wounds, treating shock and stabilizing the injured. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she refused to stop. Around her, hundreds of alien species creatures with feathers, scales, fur, or strange bioluminescent skin looked at the humans with expressions of disbelief and gratitude. No one could understand why humanity had stayed behind. The rest of the galaxy had run, the strongest armies had fled.
Ow.
But the humans had set up emergency hospitals, shield walls, and food stations. They had shared supplies, risked their lives, and opened their doors to everyone, even to species who once fought against them in past wars. Captain Grant knew the answer to the unspoken question. He didn't do it for glory. He didn't do it because he thought they could win. He did it because humans have a rule they don't break. They don't leave people behind. Whether it's humans or aliens, friend or stranger, if someone is in danger, they help. It's in their DNA, that's why they had stayed. Inside the human command tent, the situation grew worse by the second. Communication lines with the rest of the galaxy had gone dark. The Alliance had officially cut off contact with Colony K-47, leaving the humans on their own. Surveillance drones showed the swarm clouds circling the planet, consuming everything in orbit. Satellites disappeared into black static. Space debris vaporized. Massive energy tendrils reached toward the surface, like dark rivers pouring from the sky. But that wasn't the worst part. Dr. Ortiz decoded more of the strange signals inside the swarm's energy waves. The data fragments revealed something shocking. The Devourer swarm wasn't just a cosmic monster. It was artificial. It had been created by the Galactic Alliance itself thousands of years ago. It was originally a terraforming system, designed to reshape dead worlds into habitable planets. But something had gone wrong. The system had evolved beyond control, turning into a self-replicating storm that now consumed life instead of nurturing it. The Alliance covered up the disaster and erased the records. Now they were abandoning the outer colonies to hide the truth. Humanity's defiant decision to stay wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It was about exposing a lie that could collapse the galactic order. Captain Grant listened to Dr. Ortiz's report with cold fury. His jaw tightened and his fists clenched at his sides. They knew this was coming, he whispered. They sent the swarm into the outer colonies to hide the evidence. That's why they ordered evacuation. Not to save lives, but to cover up their own failure. Ortiz nodded, her face pale. We have to warn the galaxy, Captain. We have to tell them the truth, Grant agreed, but he knew the risks. Sending out that message would paint a target on humanity. The Alliance wouldn't just ignore them, they would actively try to stop them. If the secret got out, the political structure of the galaxy would collapse overnight. But Grant didn't care. He opened a secure channel and began transmitting. The data. The message was simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. This is Captain Elias Grant of the Human Emergency Response Corps. The Devourer swarms are not a natural threat. They are an artificial system created by the Galactic Alliance thousands of years ago. The swarms were meant to terraform planets, but evolve beyond control. The Alliance covered it up. We have the proof. Humanity refuses to stay silent. We will protect the civilians here, and we will expose the truth. We stand for life, not for lies. The transmission spread through hidden channels, bouncing across smuggler networks, pirate stations, and resistance groups throughout the galaxy. Even though the official Alliance channels tried to block it, the message leaked. People everywhere started to hear it. On distant planets, civilians who had been left to die realized the Alliance had betrayed them.
Oh.
Protests broke out in central worlds. Alliance officials scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Humanity had made its decision and the galaxy was listening. Back on Colony K-47, the situation reached critical levels. The first swarm tendrils touched the ground, and strange phenomena began. Air molecules disintegrated into fine energy mist. Structures in the outer zones vanished, leaving behind empty space. But in the human defense perimeter, the graviton warheads activated. Powerful gravitational fields bent the swarm's energy streams, forcing them to curve away from the shelters and medical tents. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it bought time. The humans set up new energy redirection systems aiming to hack the swarm's central code. Dr. Ortiz believed they could still reprogram the swarm, converting it back into a terraforming system. But the process was risky. If they failed, the swarm would consume the entire colony faster. Captain Grant accepted the danger, ordered the hacking sequence to begin inside the colony. Refugees from hundreds of alien species stood together, watching the humans work. Some whispered prayers, others just stared in disbelief. The humans weren't just fighting the swarm, they were fighting for the entire galaxy's future. They were doing what no other species had dared to do. They were standing between life and death, between truth and cover-up, between extinction and survival. As the night sky turned completely black and the swarm's energy pulsed like a living storm, Captain Grant made his final announcement to the people of the colony. His voice was broadcast over every speaker in every language. We are not running. We are not giving up. Stand together. Humans, aliens, all of us. We fight for life. We fight for truth. And if this is our last day, then let history remember that we stayed. Not because it was safe, not because it was smart, but because it was right. The crowd went silent, then slowly began to cheer not out of fear, but out of shared courage. Across the stars, the galaxy watched the humans stand. And deep inside the swarm, as the reprogramming signal began, something shifted. The ancient system responded to the new input. Patterns changed.
Here.
For the first time in thousands of years, the Devourer swarm hesitated. The battle for the galaxy's future had truly begun. The sky over Colony K-47 was no longer a sky, it was a swirling black ocean of living energy. The Devourer swarm had fully arrived. From horizon to horizon, a dark cloud covered everything, twisting and rolling like a massive storm that never ended. But this was not ordinary weather. This was a force of destruction beyond imagination. The swarm's tendrils reached down from the clouds like long fingers, pulling apart reality itself. Buildings dissolved into dust. Entire forests turned into streams of particles that floated upward, sucked into the sky. The swarm was not just destroying matter, it was rewriting physics in real time, changing the very structure of molecules, and converting everything into pure energy for itself. That was how it grew, feeding on entire planets, leaving behind nothing but cold emptiness. Inside the human defense perimeter, Captain Elias Grant stood at the edge of the command tent, his eyes locked on the sky. He had seen war before. He had watched cities burn during alien invasions. He had fought in zero-gravity battles where soldiers drifted lifeless into the void. But this was different. This was something no military training could prepare. Him for. The Devourer wasn't an enemy you could shoot. It wasn't a beast you could trap or poison. It was a living system, a self-replicating machine cloud that had lost its original purpose thousands of years ago. It was supposed to build life, but now it consumed life instead. And the worst part was, the Galactic Alliance had known all along. They had created this disaster, then buried the secret. That's why they had ordered the outer colonies to be abandoned. It's not to save lives, but to erase witnesses. The outer colonies were a sacrifice zone, a cover-up graveyard. Humanity had chosen to stay, not just to protect civilians, but to stop the lie from becoming permanent history. Dr. Lena Ortiz rushed into the command tent, holding a tablet covered in code streams. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned. With determination, Captain, the swarm's behavior is changing. The reprogramming signals are starting to take effect. Grant turned to face her, his expression hard but hopeful. What does that mean? Ortiz explained, breathless. The swarm isn't consuming everything anymore, skipping the areas with the graviton warheads. Some of its tendrils are actually slowing down. Parts of the cloud are listening. She hesitated, knowing how dangerous the next step would be. We need to inject the full rewrite code into the swarm's core algorithms. But if we do that, the swarm could either stabilize into a terraforming system or react violently and accelerate its destruction. Grant didn't flinch. We take the risk. We came here to save lives, not to survive comfortably. Ortiz nodded. knowing the captain was right. They had already made the choice. There was no going back. Outside, the refugee camps shivered under emergency shields. Alien families from dozens of species held each other close, watching the sky shift. Some of the refugees whispered in different languages, ancient prayers mixing with modern hopes. They had been abandoned by the Alliance, left to die. But here, they were protected by a species most of the galaxy once saw as reckless and wild humans. Humanity had taken them in, fed them, healed them, and now stood between them and extinction. On the defensive walls, human engineers worked non-stop to keep the graviton warheads operational. These devices bent local gravity fields, redirecting parts of the swarm like wind currents around a rock. It was experimental tech, unstable and dangerous, but it was working for now. The human soldiers, medics, and scientists had all accepted the same truth. This might be their last day, but they would make it count. Suddenly, a new problem arrived. Alliance military ships appeared. In orbit, massive dreadnoughts and cruiser fleets hovered above the black clouds, their weapons pointed downward. The same governments that had ordered the colonies to be abandoned were now watching humanity's actions with nervous eyes. They had intercepted the humans' message about the swarm's true origin. The political leaders of the core worlds knew the secret was out in. They couldn't let it spread any further. The Alliance command ordered the human camp to stop transmitting immediately. If humanity refused, they would open fire, even if it meant killing millions of civilians. Captain Grant received the warning on a private channel. His face tightened. But he didn't hesitate. Tell the Alliance we're not stopping. We're not silencing the truth. If they want to kill us, let the galaxy see who they really are. Dr. Ortiz sent the reply, broadcasting the Alliance threat to every corner of the network. Pirate stations, refugee groups, underground resistance movements, all of them received the message. Across the galaxy, people watched the situation unfold live in real time. The humans were standing between life and death, while the Alliance prepared to commit another betrayal. But something unexpected happened. Alliance soldiers on the dreadnoughts started refusing orders. Some of the captains refused to fire. They had seen the human broadcasts. They knew the truth now, and they weren't willing to cover it up with more blood. Mutinies broke out on multiple ships. Some crews shut down their weapons. Others sent secret messages to the human colony, offering help in any way they could. The defiant stand of humanity had inspired others. It was no longer just about humans. It was about courage versus cowardice, truth versus lies. Back on Colony K-47, Dr. Ortiz initiated the core reprogramming sequence. The swarm's data streams flowed into human servers, filling the air with strange pulses of light. The ancient code from the original terraforming system flickered back to life. It was a risky move. One wrong calculation could cause the swarm to attack even faster. But the humans had no choice. They had to try. Energy waves rippled across the swarm clouds. Tendrils slowed, paused, and then some of them changed direction. Instead of consuming matter, parts of the swarm began repairing damaged structures. Dead trees regrew leaves. Broken machines reassembled. The swarm's original programming to build, not destroy, was coming back online. Captain Grant watched the skies, his heart pounding. But he knew it wasn't over yet. The Devourer swarm was massive, and only part of it was changing. Other sections resisted the new code, pushing back with chaotic energy storms. The battle wasn't just physical now. It was a war of information. A battle between ancient commands and human defiance. Grant ordered all remaining ships to help broadcast the reprogramming signal, combining their power into one massive pulse. Every transmitter, every satellite, even refugee personal devices were used to amplify the signal. Refugee children held up their cum bracelets, helping send out the message. People across the galaxy tuned in, watching history happen. Above them, the swarm hesitated. A strange calm passed over the colony. The black clouds flickered, as if unsure what to do next. Captain Grant gave one last order. All systems push the signal. Let's finish this. The sky erupted in waves of light. The reprogramming code flooded the swarm's core systems. Tendrils retracted. The The clouds shimmered, and for the first time in thousands of years, the Devourer swarm stopped consuming. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived the arrival, they had begun to turn the monster back into what it was meant to be. The battle wasn't over yet, but humanity had taken the first step towards saving the galaxy. And the galaxy was finally watching. The clouds above Colony K-47 no longer looked like the same death storm that had arrived just hours before. Some sections of the Devourer swarm had begun to change, their dark energy shifting into glowing streams of soft blue and green light. These tendrils stopped pulling matter apart and instead started rebuilding. The soil and destroyed fields reformed itself. Broken metal beams and shattered buildings fused back together. Trees that had turned to ash resprouted leaves, and alien wildlife returned to life in areas where the reprogramming signal reached. It was happening. The humans were turning part of the swarm back into its original form, a terraforming system designed long ago to heal dead worlds. But not all of the swarm responded to the hack. Giant sections of the Black Storm still roamed freely, consuming matter, resisting the signal, fighting back against the change. Humanity's bold plan had succeeded halfway, but now they faced a terrifying new situation. A half-healed monster, Captain Elias Grant, stood on the command deck of the human base. His eyes locked on the monitors that showed the swarm's behavior. His voice stayed calm, but the lines on his face deepened. "Dr. Ortiz, status report," he ordered, his hand gripping the edge of the console. Dr. Lena Ortiz, working beside a team of exhausted human scientists, answered quickly, sweat on her forehead but determination in her voice. "The reprogramming is stabilizing in the southern hemisphere. The terraforming protocols are active there. But the northern hemisphere swarm clusters are rejecting the code. They're evolving around it, learning how to block it." Grant's jaw tightened. The Devourer wasn't just a mindless machine, it was a learning system, a self-repairing, adaptive AI cloud. It could evolve, adjust, and find ways to survive. That's why the Alliance had feared it for centuries. It wasn't just a storm, it was a predator. The human defense perimeter still stood, but it was stretched thin. Graviton. Warheads continued to bend the swarm away from key refugee zones, but the power cores were running low. Human engineers worked around the clock to recharge shield generators, using scavenged tech from broken alien ships. Refugees helped too, carrying cables, moving supplies, and keeping the medical stations running. The colony had become more than just a camp. It was a community of survival, with humans and aliens standing side by side. But Grant knew they were running out of time. The parts of the swarm that resisted the hack were closing in again, focusing their destruction on the human defense zone. The last line of defense would be tested soon. Above them, the Alliance dreadnoughts remained in orbit. They still refused to help, watching like cold observers from the safety of space. Alliance leaders debated their next move, but none dared to intervene. They feared political collapse if the truth spread further. But mutinies continued on board some of the ships. A few brave alien officers secretly sent supplies to the human colony, dropping cargo pods filled with food, medical tools, and extra power cells. Not everyone in the Alliance agreed with the cover-up anymore. Some soldiers had seen the transmissions. From the human base, the video streams of human medics saving alien children, the engineers risking their lives to keep the shields online. Across the galaxy, people watched the broadcasts in real time, and slowly, public opinion shifted. Protests broke out on core worlds. Citizens demanded the Alliance send help to Colony K-47, but the leadership still hesitated. They knew if humanity survived, the whole political system of the galaxy would change. The old powers would fall. Back on the surface, Captain Grant called an emergency meeting. Inside the command tent, the key leaders of the human defense effort gathered: engineers, medics, soldiers, scientists. Refugee representatives from other species joined the meeting too. The holographic map of the swarm filled the center of the room, showing the split behavior of the monster. Half destroying, Grant spoke with urgency, but kept his voice steady. "We're at the final defense line now. We can't run. The evacuation windows are closed. This is it. We either finish converting the swarm, or we all go down together. He looked at Dr. Ortiz. Options. Ortiz wiped her hands on her lab coat and pointed to the map. We need to push a deeper code injection into the swarm's neural net. Right now, the terraform code is working only on the surface levels of the system. We need to get into the core protocols, the ones buried from the original programming millennia ago. Grant understood the risk immediately. That means going inside the swarm physically, he said, sending a team into the neural fields to plant the final data package directly. Ortiz nodded grimly. Yes, Captain. Remote hacks won't work anymore. The swarm is blocking outside signals. We have to upload the code from inside the energy structure. The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant: suicide mission, but Grant didn't hesitate. I'll lead the team myself, he said, his voice quiet but firm. We need someone who knows the protocols, who can handle the stress. We can't order anyone else to do it. Dr. Ortiz stepped forward. Captain, you're too important to risk. I should go. But Grant shook his head. We all knew this mission was a one-way ticket when we chose to stay. Let's finish what we started. The team prepared the mission quickly. Special suits were built using graviton field stabilizers, allowing human bodies to survive for a short time inside the swarm's molecular storm. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would fly into the heart of the destructive side of the swarm, reach the ancient neural control node buried deep within its code, and inject the final directive, a reset command that would force the swarm to return to its original purpose. It was humanity's last gamble. Outside, the sky roared as the unconverted parts of the swarm accelerated their attack. Massive tendrils wrapped around entire mountains, pulling them into the sky as streams of energy. Human defense cannons fired. Gravity pulses, pushing back the destruction just enough to hold the shield perimeter. Refugees worked alongside soldiers, carrying ammunition, stabilizing wounded, and manning communication relays. The human base had become a symbol of defiance across the galaxy. Messages poured in from distant worlds, aliens of all species sending words of support, some even offering to send ships to help. But the swarm was moving too fast for outside aid now. It was up to the people on the ground. Captain Grant's team suited up, preparing for the insertion. Dr. Ortiz handed him the final directive chip, a small, glowing cube containing the ancient terraforming code. Her eyes met his, full of both fear and pride. If you get inside the neural node and upload this, we win, she whispered. If not, Grant finished her sentence softly. If not, at least we tried. He turned to his team, 5 volunteers who had agreed to go with him. Their faces were calm, their eyes steady. They knew the mission meant death, but they accepted it. They believed in something bigger than survival. They believed in saving lives, no matter the cost. As the team lifted off in small gravity jump crafts, the sky above the colony swirled with chaos. The Devourer's destructive tendrils reached toward them, trying to stop their approach. Inside the crafts, the team braced for impact, flying straight into the heart of the monster. Below, the refugees and soldiers watched in silence, knowing this was the final move in a game that could end the galaxy, or save it forever. The human gravity jump crafts sliced through the black storm, pushing deeper into the Devourer swarm, flying into a place no living creature had ever dared to enter. Captain Elias Grant sat in the lead craft, his hands steady on the controls, even as the sky around him twisted into chaos. The protective shields of the small ships shimmered with blue light, struggling to hold back the destructive energy fields. Tendrils of dark matter scraped along the hulls, trying to pull the crafts apart molecule by molecule. But the human-built graviton stabilizers held, at least for now. Inside his helmet, Grant's breathing stayed calm, even as warning lights flashed all around him. His team followed close behind, 5 volunteers who had chosen to face death in order to save billions. They had one goal: reach the swarm's neural core, a buried ancient structure that controlled the behavior of the entire system. It was the swarm's brain, the place where they could inject the final directive, forcing the monster to return to its original purpose, creating life instead of destroying it. But the journey was beyond dangerous. As the crafts pushed deeper, the normal laws of physics began to bend. Time felt slower. Colors shifted strangely. Gravity flipped directions without warning. The swarm's inner layers were not like space or air. They were like a digital ocean made of energy, memory, and ancient codes. Static signals flooded the human communication systems, strange whispers in unknown languages that had been forgotten for thousands of years. Dr. Lena Ortiz, monitoring the mission from the human base, watched the data streams with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm picking up fragments of old code in the swarm's signals," she reported. "These are not random." Communication. Grant responded calmly through his comms. "Keep recording, Doctor. We're getting close to the core." His voice was steady, but in his mind he wondered what they were really flying into. Was the swarm just a machine, or was it something more? Suddenly the crafts broke through the inner storm wall, and there it was, the neural core. Floating in the center of the swirling blackness was a massive structure, like a city-sized sphere of light and metal. It pulsed with slow waves of energy, sending out data signals in all directions. Ancient symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly. The sphere was not just a control hub, it was a memory vault, holding the entire history of the swarm's original purpose. The team gasped inside their helmets, seeing something no one in the galaxy had ever witnessed. Captain Grant guided the crafts toward a landing zone near the core surface, where a small access port flickered with welcoming blue light. It was almost as if the swarm expected them. Back at the human base, Dr. Ortiz received new signals from the neural core. Her computer screens filled with layers of code, some in ancient human languages, some in unknown alien scripts. Her eyes widened as she translated the first lines. "Captain," she whispered over the comms, her voice shaking the swarm. "It remembers us." Grant frowned. "Explain." Ortiz's voice trembled. "These messages, it's not just random data. The swarm was programmed by the ancient cedars, the first species to travel the stars. They created the swarm as a terraforming system to build life, yes, but they also embedded memories of every species that helped with the project. Humans were part of that project millions of years ago." Grant froze in his cockpit, his heart skipping a beat. That's impossible. Humanity only just reached the stars a few centuries ago. Ortiz corrected him, her hands flying across the controls. "Not this version of humanity. But some form of humanity existed long before, Captain. The swarm still carries the data. We're in the records." Inside the neural core, the team exited their crafts, stepping onto a glowing platform. Their graviton suits protected them from the molecular storm, but the pressure was intense. Captain Grant carried the final directive chip, the small cube containing the code that could change everything. They approached the access port together, the blue lights responding to their presence. As they walked, images appeared in the air around them, holographic memories stored in the swarm's systems. The team saw visions of ancient beings working, side by side, building the first terraforming machines. Tall, glowing creatures with wings, short for covered scientists with 4 arms. And among them, shockingly, human-like figures with familiar faces, working as equals. The swarm wasn't just a machine, it was a history book. A living record of forgotten times. Captain Grant felt a strange mix of awe and horror. The Galactic Alliance had covered up the swarm's true origin to protect their power. They had abandoned the outer colonies, not just to escape the Devourer, but to erase this history forever. If the galaxy learned that humans had ancient roots among the stars, everything would change. The Alliance's lies would crumble. Power would shift. Species would unite instead of divide. But that kind of truth was dangerous to those who wanted control. That's why they had let the swarm run wild. They had used fear to hide history. At the access port, the platform formed a small pedestal. Captain Grant placed the final directive chip into the slot, and immediately the neural core reacted. Light flooded the area. Streams of data flowed into the air, surrounding the team with glowing symbols and audio echoes of long-lost voices. The core spoke not in words, but in patterns of emotion, memory, and understanding. The swarm wasn't alive in the way people were. but it was aware. It recognized the team. It remembered the mission it had been created for. For thousands of years, the swarm had drifted alone, its programming broken, its purpose forgotten. Now humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. Dr. Ortiz watched from the base as the swarm's entire behavior pattern changed. The destructive sections of the cloud slowed, then shifted color from black to soft gold. Dendrils that had once consumed matter began releasing it instead, rebuilding landscapes, healing ecosystems, repairing broken cities. In the refugee camps, aliens from hundreds of species watched the skies in stunned silence as the storm calmed. Plants regrew where ash had covered the ground. Water reappeared in dry rivers. Wounded refugees stood from their beds, staring at the miracle overhead, but the process wasn't finished yet. Captain Grant knew they had started something bigger than just saving a single colony. The swarm carried records that proved humanity's deep connection to the ancient builders of the galaxy. That knowledge would shake the foundations of every government, every council, every power system in existence. The Galactic Alliance would do anything to suppress it. Grant activated his comms, sending a final transmission across all channels. Knowing the whole galaxy was watching, his voice was steady, but filled with emotion. "This is Captain Elias Grant of the Human Emergency Response Corps. We have reprogrammed the Devourer swarm. It is no longer a weapon of destruction. It is returning to its original purpose to heal and build. And there's more. The swarm carries records that prove humanity's ancient role in the founding of galactic civilization.
Ow.
The Alliance tried to hide this truth, but it is no longer hidden. We will share this knowledge with every species everywhere. No more secrets. Number, more lies. We stand together now." As his message spread across the stars, planets erupted in cheers, riots, and revolutions. The old order had been broken. The truth was out, and nothing could stop it. Above the colony, the sky glowed with soft light as the swarm finally remembered. Its purpose not to destroy life, but to protect it. Above Colony K-47, the sky shimmered with strange, peaceful lights. The Devourer swarm, once the most feared force in the galaxy, now moved slowly across the atmosphere, repairing instead of destroying. Tendrils of soft gold and silver light wrapped around broken forests, reassembling them leaf by leaf. Mountains that had been turned to ash reformed. Rivers flowed again, and the air became fresh and clean. Refugees watched from the ground in stunned silence, their faces full of disbelief. They had prepared for death, but instead witnessed a miracle. Humanity had done it. Against all odds, they had reprogrammed the swarm, saving not just the colony, but proving that the ancient terraforming system could still be controlled. But deep in the minds of Captain Elias Grant and Dr. Lena Ortiz, there was no time for celebration. They knew the real danger was still coming, in orbit. The Galactic Alliance fleets watched the events unfold from the safety of their warships. The dreadnoughts, cruisers, and battle carriers hovered silently above the planet, their weapon systems fully charged. The Alliance leaders had seen the same transmissions that now flooded the galaxy, videos of the swarm calming, rebuilding worlds, and revealing ancient data that connected humanity to the first civilizations of the galaxy. The truth was out. Billions across the stars now knew the Alliance had lied. The cover-up had failed. But for the leaders of the Alliance, the exposure of their secrets meant only one thing: they were losing control. And when corrupt powers lose control, they strike back. Orders were given in cold voices from inside the command centers of the core worlds. Humanity was now considered a threat to galactic order. The Alliance High Command labeled the human colony on K-47 as an illegal insurgent zone. All human forces in the area were to be destroyed. The knowledge could not be allowed to spread further, no matter how many innocent lives were lost in the process. Inside the human command tent, Captain Grant and Dr. Ortiz received the warning on their encrypted channels. A message from an insider, a sympathetic officer, on one of the dreadnoughts flashed across the screen. They are coming. Full military strike planned. No negotiation. Prepare for orbital bombardment. Grant's face hardened, but his eyes stayed clear. He had expected this from the beginning. Heroes don't change the galaxy without enemies appearing, he turned to Ortiz. They're going to try and erase us. Ortiz nodded grimly. And if they destroy the swarm's core node, all this progress will be lost. The rebuild protocols will collapse. The swarm could revert to destruction again. Sal Richawalda, Redot, Wadawad, Rewad, Redawad, Red, Rarod, Rodard Odaret, Rod, Redod, Rewerdod. Captain understood perfectly. The Alliance didn't just want to kill the humans, they wanted to break the swarm again, so they could use it as a future weapon, or keep it as a threat hanging over outer colonies. The idea of a peaceful, life-building swarm was dangerous too. Their power structure, too many people would demand change. Too many species would unite. The Alliance couldn't allow that. So they had chosen war. Down in the colony, soldiers rushed to prepare for the incoming attack. Human engineers worked quickly to set up shield generators, using spare parts scavenged from crashed ships and refugee tech. Civilians helped too, carrying heavy equipment, reinforcing walls, and setting up emergency medical stations. They knew the orbital weapons of the Alliance could destroy them in minutes, but no one ran. No one begged for mercy. They had already decided if this was the end, they would go down standing, not hiding. Captain Grant sent out one final broadcast to the galaxy. His face appeared on thousands of screens across planets, stations, and hidden colonies. We have made our choice. We stand for life, not lies. The Alliance wants to silence us. They cannot silence the truth. We ask the people of the galaxy to watch what happens next. Know who your leaders really are. Know that humanity will not back down. Not now, not ever. The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, resistance. Groups rose up, protests turned into rebellions. Soldiers on distant planets refused Alliance orders, questioning everything they had been told. Civilian broadcasts continued sharing the footage of the human colony's defense preparations. People of all species watched the humans set up their shields, arm their gravity cannons, and organize refugee volunteers into supply lines. The world held its breath, knowing this was not just a battle for one planet, it was a battle for the future of all civilizations. Above the colony, the Alliance warships opened fire. Massive energy beams shot down from orbit, burning the sky, targeting the human defense lines. The ground shook as blasts hit the shield domes. Some shields held, others cracked, but engineers quickly rerouted power to keep them stable. Human gravity cannons fired back, not to destroy the warships, but to push away the orbital strikes with precision pulses. It was like trying to hold back a hurricane with umbrellas, but somehow it worked for a few precious moments. Captain Grant stood at the front lines, directing defense efforts with calm focus. His team in the neural core of the swarm continued transmitting the healing codes, knowing that if the core was destroyed, everything would collapse. Dr. Ortiz managed the medical tents, treating the wounded as more civilians arrived, volunteering to help however they could. Then something unexpected happened. The swarm itself joined the fight. The parts of the Devourer that had accepted the reprogramming responded to the Alliance attack. Golden tendrils reached into space, wrapping gently, but firmly around incoming weapons fire, bending the energy streams away from the colony. The swarm's ancient protective systems, once used to shield newborn planets during terraforming, activated again. This time they protected the humans and refugees below. The Alliance ships tried to adjust, firing more powerful blasts. But the swarm's rebuilt sections kept absorbing the hits, transforming destruction into reconstruction. Fields of energy above the colony began to sparkle with new growth crystals. flowers and living structures growing from light itself. Inside the dreadnoughts, some Alliance soldiers hesitated. They had seen the live footage. They knew the humans. Weren't the villains here? The orders to fire became harder to follow. More crews refused commands, locking down their weapons, disabling their engines. Some captains surrendered their ships to resistance leaders over secure channels. Others joined the human side openly, broadcasting their defection across the galaxy. The Alliance High Command grew desperate, ordering the remaining ships to deploy. Ground troops to finish the job? Dropships launched from orbit, heading toward the colony with elite Alliance commandos, hoping to kill the human leaders and destroy the swarm core manually. Captain Grant prepared for the ground battle. His soldiers armed themselves with plasma rifles, but they knew this wasn't about weapons anymore. It was about ideas, about courage, about refusing to surrender to fear. As the dropships landed near the colony, the humans and refugees stood, together, ready to fight not just for their lives, but for the new future they had already begun to build. The swarm's golden tendrils hovered overhead, not attacking, but protecting. It's like a silent guardian. In the final moments before the battle, Grant sent one last message to his team and the galaxy beyond. They can send ships. They can send armies. But they cannot stop this. We're already winning, already free. And if we fall here today, others will rise tomorrow. This is not the end. It's the beginning. The Alliance troops charged forward, and the final battle began. The ground shook beneath the feet of soldiers and refugees alike as the Alliance dropships landed outside the human colony's defensive perimeter. The air filled with the roar of engines and the metallic clank of troop carriers deploying. Elite Alliance commandos, dressed in dark armor and equipped with the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy, spilled out of the ships. They moved in perfect formation, cold and silent, like machines designed only to kill. Their mission was clear: breach the human defenses, destroy the swarm's neural core, and eliminate Captain Elias Grant, along with every member of his team. The Galactic Alliance High Command had decided that the truth humanity uncovered could not be allowed to survive. It wasn't just about the swarm anymore. It was about control of history itself. If the galaxy learned that humans had ancient roots as builders of life, the power systems of the current galaxy would collapse. Old governments would fall, replaced by new alliances based on cooperation, not fear. And the Alliance leaders couldn't let that happen. They had chosen force over honesty, weapons over dialogue. And now the final battle was here. Inside the colony, Captain Grant stood at the front lines, his plasma rifle in hand, but his mind focused on the bigger picture. His people had rebuilt the swarm, reprogramming parts of it to heal instead of destroy. The refugee camps were safe for now, protected by golden tendrils of the swarm's new protocols. But the neural core, deep inside the restructured sections of the swarm, was still vulnerable. If the Alliance troops reached it and destroyed it, the swarm might revert back to its deadly original aerostate. Everything the humans had worked for would vanish in seconds. Worse, the ancient data stored inside the core of the records, proving humanity's ancient role in galactic history, would be erased forever. Grant knew this battle wasn't about territory or military victory. It was a battle for truth, for the right to remember, for the right to choose a future based on unity instead of fear. And every soldier in the colony knew it too.
That's
why no one ran, no one hesitated. They all stood ready, side by side, soldiers and civilians, humans and aliens, defending not just their lives, but the idea that the galaxy could change as the Alliance commandos advanced. The human defenders unleashed precise gravity cannon blasts, using the graviton warheads to push back enemy formations without causing unnecessary death. Captain Grant had given strict orders: defend, but don't massacre. This wasn't about hate. It was about stopping the attackers without becoming like them. And the human engineers had even programmed non-lethal defense drones, which hovered above the battlefield, using focused gravity beams to disable Alliance weapons and scatter their ranks without killing. But the Alliance troops were trained for extreme conditions. They pressed forward, using shock grenades and pulse shields to break through. The ground battle became chaotic. Plasma blasts lit up the sky. Shield generators hummed at maximum power. Refugee volunteers carried ammunition, repaired wounded defensive lines, and pulled injured defenders to safety. Dr. Lena Ortiz ran the medical stations, treating human and alien casualties side by side. She never stopped moving, hands steady. Even as explosions shook the ground, her team used nanite medical pods, devices developed during the human efforts to stabilize the swarm's healing protocols. These pods repaired broken bones, stopped bleeding, and even regrew tissue in real time. But there weren't enough for everyone. Some wounds still meant death. Ortiz felt the weight of every life she couldn't save, but she kept going, knowing. The fight wasn't just on the battlefield, it was also in the medical tents, where compassion proved more powerful than politics. Meanwhile, the swarm itself began to shift again. The parts of the swarm that had accepted the human reprogramming responded to the battle below. Golden tendrils wrapped around the sky, intercepting energy blasts from the Alliance ships still firing from orbit. The swarm's ancient purpose protection and growth was now active again, defending the colony like a living shield. But the sections of the swarm still resisting the new code grew restless, flickering between destructive and healing patterns. It was as if the swarm itself was torn between two futures, one of peace and one of endless consumption. The outcome of the ground battle would decide which path it chose inside the neural core. Deep within the swarm's rebuilt systems, a small human team continued to work. They were uploading the full directive, the final sequence of code that would lock in the swarm's new behavior permanently. If they succeeded, the swarm would become a galaxy-wide terraforming system again, capable of rebuilding dead worlds, healing ecosystems, and sharing the ancient knowledge hidden in its memory banks. But if they failed, the swarm could spiral back into chaos, consuming everything. The team knew the stakes, and they worked quickly. Even as the energy around them pulsed with instability, Captain Grant coordinated the defense, his voice steady over the comm channels. "Hold the line. Every second we hold gives the team more time to finish the upload." His soldiers responded without hesitation, adjusting positions, using creative tactics to outmaneuver the more heavily armed Alliance troops. Human snipers used graviton rounds to disable enemy exosuits instead of killing the soldiers inside. Drone teams hacked Alliance targeting systems, causing confusion in their ranks. Refugee engineers used alien tech combined with human designs to create adaptive barriers, shields, that recharged instantly by pulling energy from the swarm itself. It was the first real galactic teamwork seen in generations, humans and aliens working together, side by side. No longer enemies or rivals, but allies. Despite the Defenders' efforts, the Alliance commandos pushed closer to the neural core entrance. They sent specialized hacker units to try and disrupt the reprogramming signals. Some of the soldiers were beginning to doubt their orders, seeing the humans and aliens cooperating, seeing the swarm heal instead of destroy. But fear and loyalty to their commanders pushed them forward. They had been told humanity was a threat to peace. They'd been told lies their whole lives. Now they faced the truth, but in the heat of battle, changing sides wasn't easy. At the edge of the neural core, the human defense team made their last stand. Captain Grant himself joined the front line, firing his weapon, directing his people. Knowing this was the final moment, if the Alliance troops broke through now, the core would fall, the data would be lost, and the galaxy would remain trapped in the old systems of control and silence. But just as the enemy breached the outer layer of defenses, a new signal erupted from the swarm. The full directive was fully uploaded. Golden light burst from the neural core, shooting into the sky, spreading across the entire swarm network. The destructive sections of the swarm slowed, paused, then shifted to healing mode permanently. The swarm accepted the new commands not as a weapon, but as a protector. The Alliance troops stopped in confusion as the golden tendrils of the swarm wrapped gently around them, disarming weapons, lifting helmets, and showing them holographic images of the ancient past. They saw visions of humans working side by side with ancient species, building life, not destroying it. The soldiers realized the truth: they had been fighting the wrong enemy. Some dropped to their knees, tearing off their insignias, refusing to continue the attack. Captain Grant stood in the middle of the battlefield, his weapon lowered, his face calm. Around him, the war ended not with more death, but with understanding. The battle for truth had been won, not by force, but by courage, sacrifice, and the decision to stand for something bigger than survival. The golden lights of the reprogrammed swarm stretched across the skies of Colony K-47 and far beyond, reaching into space, touching distant moons, and flowing across the galaxy like a living wave of renewal. The battle was over, but the real victory had just begun. All across the galaxy, people of every species tuned in to the live transmissions from the human colony. Their eyes wide, their hearts racing, watching history change in real time. No one had seen anything like this before. The Devourer Swarm, once the deadliest threat in the universe, had become a force of life again, repairing broken worlds, restoring ecosystems, and activating ancient programs that had been buried for millions of years. The truth could no longer be hidden. Humanity had not only saved themselves, they had saved everyone. And now the galaxy had to face what came next. On the surface of Colony K-47, Captain Elias Grant stood among the ruins of the last battle, his armor scratched and burned, his hands resting on his helmet as he looked at the sky. Around him, soldiers lowered their weapons. Refugees hugged one another, some crying, some laughing, unable to believe they were still alive. Former enemies, the Alliance commandos who had been sent to kill him, now stood beside his people, helping to tend the wounded and repair the defense. Lines not because they had lost, but because they had woken up. The swarm's memory projections had shown them the truth, the shared history of the galaxy, the ancient unity between species, the role humanity had played in building the stars. So long ago, the images of cooperation and life-building had shattered the propaganda they had been taught since birth. The war wasn't about survival anymore. It was about rewriting the galaxy's future. Dr. Lena Ortiz worked tirelessly in the medical, tense, moving from patient to patient, her hands steady, even though her mind raced with the possibilities of what lay ahead. Her team treated humans, aliens, and even former Alliance soldiers, no longer seeing differences between them. They were all just people now, people caught in a moment of enormous change. She thought back to the beginning, to the moment when the Alliance had ordered all species to abandon the outer colonies, leaving the sick and the weak to die. She remembered how humanity had refused that order, standing alone at first, choosing compassion over survival instincts. And now, that choice had changed the galaxy forever. Ortiz smiled softly as she worked, knowing that no matter what happened next, no one could ever say again that humanity was just another violent species. They had proven otherwise. Above the planet, remaining Alliance warships hovered silently, their commanders frozen with indecision. The Alliance High Command's orders had been clear: destroy the human colony, erase the evidence, suppress the truth. But now their troops on the ground refused to fight. Some ships had already defected, joining the side of the colony openly. Others had shut down their weapons, unwilling to fire on civilians and peaceful swarm structures that now blossomed like living art in space. Inside the control rooms of those ships, officers argued, some demanding loyalty to the old system, others calling for a new beginning. The galaxy stood on the edge of a revolution, and no one could stop it. The swarm's neural core, deep inside the energy fields above Colony K-47, sent out new signals, broadcasting not just healing codes, but information records of ancient alliances, blueprints for technologies long forgotten, and messages from the ancient seeders, the first life builders of the stars. These records revealed that humanity was not new to the galaxy, but part of its foundation. Long before current civilizations rose, ancient humans had traveled with other species, helping to build terraforming systems, seeding life across dead worlds, and creating tools meant to help, not harm. Over time, wars and collapses had erased that history. Now, thanks to the swarm's restored memory banks, the truth had returned. Captain Grant gathered his leadership team in the command tent, their faces tired but hopeful. "We've done more than survive," he told them, his voice calm but powerful. "We've changed the direction of the galaxy. But this is just the start. The Alliance leaders will try to regroup. There will be political chaos. Some will resist this change. Others will join it. We need to be ready for both. Dr. Ortiz nodded. We have to share this knowledge carefully. If we move too fast, some species might panic. If we move too slow, the old powers might find ways to twist it, Grant agreed. We'll release the data step by step, working with scientists, leaders, and regular people from every world. No more secrets, but no more fear either. Across the galaxy, millions of people took to the streets, gathering in massive, peaceful demonstrations. On core worlds, protesters demanded the removal of corrupt leaders who had ordered the outer colonies to be abandoned. New councils formed, made up of citizens who had watched the events on K-47 and decided they wanted a different future. Soldiers in distant garrisons laid down their arms, refusing to fight for the old lies. Independent news channels broadcast the swarm's ancient records, showing images of humans and aliens working together as builders, not conquerors. A new era was starting, not because of military power, but because of the courage to tell the truth. Back on Colony K-47, the swarm continued its work, sending tendrils of energy into orbit and beyond, repairing old satellites, regrowing dead moons, and activating terraforming systems on forgotten planets. What had once been a force of death was now a guardian of life, and the galaxy's people no longer saw it as a monster, but as a protector. The swarm had become a symbol of what could happen when people chose unity over division, healing over destruction. Captain Grant sent a final message to the galaxy, his image appearing on every screen from core worlds to outer colonies. His face was lined with exhaustion, but also lit with hope. To all the people of the galaxy, this is Elias Grant. We have stopped the swarm not by destroying it, but by remembering what it was always meant to be. We have uncovered the truth about our shared past. Humanity was part of the builders, but now every species must become part of the builders again. Hey, this is not about one planet or one race, it's about all of us. Together we can rebuild worlds, heal the damage of the past, and create a galaxy where no one is left behind. We invite you to join us. Let's make a future where the word enemy no longer exists. The message echoed across space, reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. People listened, not as humans, not as aliens, but as beings who shared the same sky. For the first time in countless generations, they saw a path forward that wasn't built on fear or control, but on cooperation and truth. The old era of silence and suppression was over. New galactic era had begun, one led not by weapons or empires, but by people who refused to abandon each other ever again.